Hello, I'm Matt T. I'm the Chief Executive of the Independent Press Standards Organisation. Today we've published our annual report for 2017. In the annual report you'll find coverage of all of IPSO's activities for the last year, including how many complaints we took. Last year we took 20,000 or so complaints, which is more than we've ever taken before, up from 15,000 the year before. It's important to realise that not all of those complaints will have been things that we were able to investigate. Sometimes people complain about newspapers we don't regulate, for example. And some of those complaints will have been what we call multiple complaints, where more than one person complains about the same article in the newspaper. We've had up to 1,500 people complaining about the same article, for example. In terms of which publications have received the most complaints, there's a table in the annual report. I think it's unsurprising that the newspapers with the biggest circulations also receive the most complaints. So you'll find that The Sun, the Mail Online and the Daily Mail are up at the top of the league table. But it's also, again, important to know that not all of those complaints will have been things where we found a breach of the code. Indeed, actually very few of them were actually found to be in breach of the code in the end. One of the things that's mentioned in the annual report, which is an IPSO service I'm particularly proud of, is something we call private advisory notices. These are notices we issue when somebody is perhaps being harassed by a journalist or a photographer, or indeed where you sometimes see large numbers of journalists outside somebody's house. In those circumstances, if someone gets in touch with us and tells us they don't want to speak to the press, we can issue a notice to editors that says that and asks them to consider desisting from doing what they're doing. And we find in many cases that results very rapidly in journalists leaving the area. Two things I also want to highlight from the annual report this year. First of which is that this year we did more training than we've ever done before for editors and journalists in newsrooms and indeed for journalism students in universities. And I think we're beginning to see the benefits of that showing through in the way newspapers are handling complaints and the sort of complaints that we're receiving. The other thing we've done in this year, which I'm very pleased about, is issued several pieces of guidance for the public and for editors. The first of which was on the use of social media. So this would be, for example, where a newspaper wanted to use a photograph from somebody's Facebook account. Under what circumstances they're allowed to do that, all of that's explained in our guidance, which I think newspapers and the public have found useful since we've issued it. The other piece of guidance we issued was about how newspapers can report when somebody dies in a sensitive way which doesn't intrude too much into the family's grief. The last thing I wanted to mention as a feature from the year just gone was that we launched something we call the IPSO mark. This is a sort of logo which newspapers can carry to show that they're regulated by IPSO and have signed up to be covered by a professional code of standards. You'll find that logo, that mark now in all of the national newspapers and many local newspapers. Have a look in your newspaper and see if you can find the IPSO mark and as a sign of a commitment to professional standards and being held to account for those standards. The IPSO annual report is available on our website, www.ipso.co.uk.